What is up and welcome back. I am your hostess doing the mostest, Kivanchi, and we are back with another episode of So There's That. Today's episode, we are skipping into some episodes of season 1 of Bel-Air. So not to be confused with the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, let's go ahead and just lay out some ground rules and some differences. So we have the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which starred Will Smith. It was a lighthearted and comedic version of Will Smith's life on how he went from Philadelphia all the way to Bel-Air to live with his aunt, her husband, and his cousin so that he can just get a better chance at life. In 2020, I believe it was 2020 or 2021, this director got together and did like a reimagined version that was put on YouTube of what would the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air look like in these times. And it was so good that Will Smith and Westbrook Studios decided to put some money behind it and actually create a reimagined version of the same story. Now, what do we have with Bel-Air that's different than the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air? Well, for one, in West Philadelphia, born and raised on a playground is where I spent most of my days. It was very fun. In Bel-Air, it was not necessarily a fun thing. So in Bel-Air, and I'm just gonna try to like sum up episodes 1 through 4. What am I doing? 1 through 4, sorry. I forgot temporarily which episode I was recapping today. So let me just try to sum it up. Oh man, how can I put this? First and foremost, everybody's fine. Let's just talk about that. Everybody looks great. Obviously, Philip is still like this lawyer, but he wants to run for, oh my God, I forget which office he wants to run for. He's running for a seat. I think he's actually running for judge at this point. I wish I could remember. And Aunt Viv, she used to be an artist, kind of renowned, but when she had the kids and everything, she gave that up to, you know, stay at home with the kids, support Philip's dream. Hillary is not this ditz or anything like that. But she is a social media influencer. So again, a reimagined version. It's 2020. I think when season 1 came out, it came out in 2021 or 2022. So you got to think this is where we are now in the times. So she's an influencer. She loves to cook and she wants to do that for a living. We still got the storyline where Aunt Viv is not really vibing with what Hillary wants to do with her life. Philip supports her though. So I know in the original, Philip and Aunt Viv was kind of like, Hillary, what the hell are you finna do with your life? But here, she really has a beef with her mama. And we'll get to that in today's recap. Carlton has anxiety disorder. And he has medication for it, but he's self-medicating. And I know one thing that people were really talking about, like, oh, like Carlton's on drugs and this, that, and the third. What I love about Bel-Air versus the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, in the 90s, early 2000s, you really couldn't touch on that on those networks. One, the world wasn't ready for it. Two, you had to give these disclaimers. Oh, today, you know, today's show with discretion, it may cause da 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 da. We're going to be talking about HIV/AIDS. We're going to be talking about all these other things, right? And you only got 20 something minutes to really tackle it, and so it was almost condensed too much. Whereas here, it's on a streaming platform. They can cuss, they can do everything. And so you see Carlton, this black boy in an all-white prep school, trying to fit in with the white kids, struggling with anxiety disorder. He likes this girl, Lisa, but she only looks at him as a friend. He's wildly insecure. All his friends throw these wild parties. They're drinking, they're doing drugs, they're doing all this other stuff that affluent kids do. So it's only natural that Carlton feels a connection through that, because he feels disconnected from his father. He still looks up to Phil, but he feels as though he falls short every time. And so that's kind of like the root of his issues. He's very insecure in the shadows of his father. We have young Ashley, just young, a girl. She's trying to discover like her gender identity, sexuality, all these other things that kids today are faced with, and that kids today have the space within their own families to actually talk about. Whereas back then, even some families now still subscribe to, oh, if you're gay, I'm kicking you out, or if you're gay, you're not getting in the wheel and stuff like that. So it's a black family in this new world, in today's world, where we actually get to explore the traumas. Speaking of trauma, like I said, in The Fresh Prince, it was very light. We had some heavy episodes, you know, the infamous, you know, why didn't my father love me, you know, with Will crying. But here we see that in the fight at the, it wasn't even a playground, at the park, at the basketball court, Trey was getting beat, probably would have been like gotten beat to death, all because Will and Trey won a basketball game against the other dude. And when Will saw Trey getting stomped on, Will pulled a gun out to like break it up and scare everybody. And then the cops came at that exact time, so Will got arrested along with the other guy. And Will's mom called Aunt Viv and was like, can you and Philip get him out and get him out of this city? So it wasn't just some spat of a basketball game, because at the park, because Will had the gun, all these cops had guns on him. So Will is dealing with PTSD from not only watching his friend get stomped on, but from getting arrested and having guns pulled on him and thinking, I'm going to die today. So it's not funny. Like, there's funny elements, but comedy, I gotta look at the ratings on this on Peacock, but I think it's a drama with comedy as like a secondary thing. And then my favorite change of all is Jeffrey. Jeffrey got an accent, but baby, Jeffrey is fine. And Jeffrey might be a hitman. We don't know. We do know that he keeps Phil's secrets, and Phil is not as white collar and as upstanding as one might think. So I don't want to, this is not a recap of all the other episodes, but this is just me kind of like spinning it all up for y'all to really get like a gist of where we're going as I dive into season 1, episode 5 of Bel-Air. That was a really long intro, and unfortunately, I mean, I guess if you were taking a road trip or something, this is gonna be a long episode. But this episode I wanted to do because it tackles, if you've ever grown up in a impoverished neighborhood, or just in a family dynamic where you felt less than, and then you ended up getting into a situation or a new life to where things are looking up for you, and then all your family members and old friends and stuff start basically calling you a sellout, then you'll understand this episode. And I chose this episode because I went through this at times. I don't know that I go through it as much anymore, but I went through this for a very long time. I'm talking over a decade, at least like 15 years, and it sucks. So let's dive into this episode, and then we will kind of summarize everything at the end. So we open up this episode with a little recap of Aunt Viv noticing that Will was sad and that he missed his friend Trey, and so she is like, I will fly Trey out here because, you know, you're homesick, and, you know, with everything that went down, I know you want to see him. So the reason Will wanted to see him is because Trey got shot when Will left, and they wanted to find out where he was or whatever. They shot Trey. So Will was just very worried, very concerned, and Viv is like, okay, let's bring him out here. Also, another reason that Will was a little bit concerned is because Rashad, the guy who he got into a fight with at the basketball courts, he knew where Will was, because when Will was playing basketball at his new school at Bel-Air High or whatever, it went viral, and so they all knew where Will was. So it was like this whole thing with Will and Trey, and just really trying to, like, Will was kind of trying to keep the dangers of the situation from Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv, while him and Trey just did teenage boy stuff thinking that they could contain it, when it was something that was very dangerous. So Will ended up going to Joffrey and was like, yo, I keep calling him Joffrey because I'm thinking of Game of Thrones. He went to Jeffrey and was like, yo, like, I can't tell Aunt Viv, I can't tell Uncle Phil, but Rashad knows where I am. And Jeffrey's like, it's cool, I got it, like, everything's gonna be good. And then the next thing you know, Rashad is no longer in the land of the living, so everything's peachy. So we get into the scene, and Will is sitting in the car with Trey doing his homeboy things, showing off all the little gadgets and everything in the car, and Trey is like super impressed. I really want to say though, with the actor that plays Trey, he does Don Cheadle justice. That energy that we met Don Cheadle with in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, that we really didn't get to expand on in that episode, you really saw a lot of that teenage boy excitement and that brotherhood in the show. So shout out to the actor who plays Trey, because he did so good. Will asked Trey if he's still hanging out with the old crew, and Trey was like, I'm done with that. And Will was like, even with old girl? And he was like, look, I almost died, it ain't worth it. I want to see graduation of high school, like I want to see all of that. And so Trey is kind of just like chilling, but he's just like, I miss my boy, I miss Will, I miss my homie, like, it's gonna suck for you to give up all of this for when you come back home, because like, this is dope, but your home is back in Philly, but sure, nice car. Will hears that, and he kind of just stops for a minute, and he doesn't address it. He just glosses over it, and he's like, okay, come into the house and let me give you a tour. So they walk into the house, and Will is giving him a tour, and Trey is like, this looks like an art gallery, and Will's just naming off the different artists and stuff like that. And Trey kind of, ribs him a little bit, and just like, oh, look at, they got you knowing like different artists and stuff, like different paintings. And Will's like, if you actually get into it, it's pretty interesting. So you get this back-to-back like 1-2 combo of Trey being like, oh, that's gonna be a shame that you gotta give all this up. Oh dang, they got you like this. And you hear, I don't know if we hear envy yet. I heard envy because I went through this in my real life when I moved from where I was and chose to move to where I was going. It was very much like, oh, you talk white, oh, you dance white, oh, you think you white, oh, you think you better, oh, you think you this. And then having someone be like, well, I let you go and I can bring you back, threatening to like take you from the place that is more beneficial for you. I've been there, so I understand why Will would gloss over it with his friend, because how do you tell a friend that you're not coming back? So the boys head into Aunt Viv's room, and she's in her paint room, and she's just kind of like thinking and mulling it over, because she's thinking about maybe coming back into the game. She had a couple of friends, and this big major art guy played by Michael Ealy. Like, Michael Ealy plays like the finest people in television. So she's wondering if she does have what it takes. She hasn't painted in 15 years. So they walk in there and, you know, she's excited to see Trey. I don't know if a lot of people knew, but okay, I'll just say if you didn't know, Will is Aunt Viv's nephew. Uncle Phil is just there through marriage. So he's very close with her, and because he's very close with her and Trey's his best friend, she's very close with Trey. So Trey brings her like her favorite cookies and stuff from Philly and everything like that. And Trey says again, like, oh, well, you know, when Will come back to Philly, you know, we can sing you some all the time. And Aunt Viv looks at Will, and Will kind of looks away. And she's like, well, you know, that's what he wants, but you know, we're not making any decisions right now. Like, give me my cookies, little boy, like whatever. And she's just kind of staring, and Will just blows it off. So we move into Uncle Phil's home office, and he is in there with his campaign manager, which is played by Dwayne Martin. So he's in there with his campaign manager, and they're talking about how his strategy for basically running on the campaign of defunding the police has improved his percentage in the polls with black people, because before he was not getting them votes, y'all. He was not getting them votes because he was playing the fence. And they ended up kind of cornering him at this rally, and he finally spoke from the heart. And so this boosted his stuff in sales. So in the middle of that, Will brings in Trey. You know, he's just bringing Trey around because the family knows Trey. And, you know, they go in there, and Uncle Phil is like, you know, how is everything, you know, considering, you know, the situation, just wanted to make sure that you was good. And Trey was like, yeah, if we call me getting shot a situation, like, yeah, it's good. And the strategist, Steve and Lewis, Steve looks over and he's like, is there something that I need to know? Like, is there some dirt that I need to find out that your opponents could possibly dig up? And so Uncle Phil's like, nah, like, it's cool. And he surprised them by saying that he has VIP tickets for them to see their favorite rap artist. The rap artist is none other than D Smoke. So if you don't know D Smoke, you need to go watch him on Netflix's Rhythm and Flow. It was his rap competition, and he's this black guy from Cali, and he would rap in English and Spanish. Now, he's not Afro-Latino, but he said that he wanted to be able to rap and reach everybody in the community in which he lived. And so he kind of wanted to make it inclusive. And so that's who they got tickets for. And Trey is through the roof. Will loves him, but Trey stands him. Okay? So we're back with Aunt Viv, and she's getting dressed when Will's mom, Vi, calls her and FaceTimes her. And, you know, they're just talking about, you know, how Will is doing and everything like that. And Vi is just like, yeah, you know, that's my boy. You know, I can't wait for him to come back. And this, that, and the third. And Aunt Viv is like, you know, I think he's doing great here. He's getting settled. He's getting into new things. And Vi is like, okay, that's still my son. And you're not going to take him from me. And Aunt Viv is like, I'm not trying to take your child. And Vi is just being real protective. And again, it's kind of going back into that whole, like, the haves and have-nots, and feeling like you need to not put down the more successful person, but there's a level of defensiveness that you, instead of listening, you're so defensive that you're not really listening to what she's saying. And you're so worried about pulling your son back into this life that you're not really looking at the fact that the life that you want to pull him back into is a life that almost got him killed. So she's having this real, like, selfish mom moment, and Aunt Viv is like, look, this is not about me, this is not about you. It's about Will. He's old enough to make these own decisions. And Vi is like, well, he's still a child, he's still my child, I make these decisions for him. And so Aunt Viv is just like, okay, girl, like, I'm not even gonna fight you. I'm not even finna fight you, because that's not what this is about. But, you know, I love you, and, you know, talk to you soon. So all this stuff is going on in the rest of the house, and Will finally brought Trey to his room, and they picking out clothes for the concert and everything. And Trey was like, all these books, you don't read, nigga? And Will was like, actually, The Alchemist is a really good book. And so we just keep, like, Trey has come in and touched down, and he is on a mission to pull Will out of the situation because he doesn't feel, what's the word? Honestly, at this point, when you're watching it, you know he does not want his friend to do better than him. He don't think that he deserves to do better than him, because at every moment it's like, oh wow, this is great. So anyway, when you come back to being poor, oh, this is great. So when you come back to being poor, when you come back to having nothing, when you come back to not being able to go to college because your mama can't afford it, when you come back to, yeah, Rashad may be going, but somebody else might take over. When you come back to not even being able to play basketball at the community park because some gangbangers is there. So his like, this is what he keeps trying to prompt Will to come back to, and Will is just ice skating and gliding over every single mention of coming back. He's just avoiding the conversation altogether. At this point, Will is doing what he does best, avoiding, and he tells Trey to go pick out a suit so he can get ready for the dinner. And Trey's like, bro, y'all extra as hell. So Hillary is throwing a dinner because for the people in the influencer house that she wants to get into. So they're getting ready to get dressed and get dressed up for that. Will comes downstairs and Hillary is like getting everything in place. She's trying to like set everything up, make sure everything is looking good. And Will goes over to her and he's like, you know, I need to talk to you. You know, what would you think about me going back to Pennsylvania? And she's like, you know, do you hate it here? Like, what's going on? And Will's like, no, not really. And she was like, look, you're doing great here. You're thriving, you're learning new things, and you're figuring out stuff about yourself that you would not have known there. And he was like, you know, but I miss it. You know, I miss my friends. I miss everything. And she was like, you can miss it and still not go back. It doesn't mean that you're abandoning it. It just means that you're trying to make a decision to do something more with your life. And I really like that as a touching moment because, like I said, I personally went through this. Went through the tears and went through family members trying to guilt me and manipulate me into doing things that I didn't want to do. And so what I love about Bel-Air is that you really get to dive into these conversations. There is no giggling moment over these. You're not laughing. There's not no laughing track. There's not an audience. It's just people telling real stories and having real emotions about this duality of having one side of your life wanting to pull you back and you feeling guilt of abandoning it, while you have another side of your life that you know will propel you farther, but will you feel like a sellout? Like, will you forget where you came from? So absolutely love that scene between Will and Hillary. So we're in Uncle Phil's office and he got his headphones in and Aunt Viv come in and she's staring at him all sexy like, and then he realizes she in the room and he's staring at her all sexy like, and it's just getting steamy. Like, I love that. Like, don't get me wrong, in the Fresh Prince, like Uncle Phil and Aunt Viv, like they were everything. I just watched a clip today where Aunt Viv was like in the mirror in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and she was like, you know, do you think I'm still beautiful? And he comes up behind her and he makes her look at herself and he's speaking like life into her and all these affirmations. So like, it was always giving black love, okay? So in this scene, you got these two people and they're just really capturing everything that Aunt Viv and Uncle Phil stands for. And so they're talking about, you know, Hillary's thing, and Uncle Phil kind of like lists everybody that's coming and the different things of that nature. And Aunt Viv was like, how do you know all that? He was like, you didn't read Hillary's prep email? And she was like, oh no, I just thought like we was gonna be chilling. So you get to see kind of the source of contention between Hillary and Aunt Viv, like I was talking about earlier. Hillary is putting on this big dinner and she's hosting and doing all this other stuff, and because Aunt Viv doesn't believe in her, she didn't even bother reading the email, so she don't even know who's coming to her house. So Uncle Phil doesn't necessarily make her feel bad, but he just gives her the rundown and the information so that she can at least be engaged to support her daughter in some way, shape, or form. So we're at the dinner table, everybody's chatting it up, things seem to be going really well. It looks like everybody loves the food. And you get this shot of Trey just kind of like taking everything in. You just hear like chatter and stuff around him, and he's throwing them back. But he's looking with like a look of disdain and a look of jealousy, to be honest. But everybody's just in their own world that they really don't even notice. So as Phil is making a toast to Hillary, and all of that, Trey, drunk, leans over to Carlton and was like, oh, you're gonna be happy real soon. And Carlton's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, oh, because Will coming back to Philly, so then all the attention gets to be back on you. And you sit, and as a viewer, you're like, wow, Will has never once said this, but his anger is kind of in there, and so he lets slip like, oh, now that Rashad is dead, Will don't have to hide out here anymore. Carlton didn't know why Will came out. All he was told was Will came out to get a better education so he could get better opportunities when going off to college. Carlton hates Will. Whatever you thought was in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, multiply that times 1,000. He hates Will for all the same reasons that he didn't like him in the Fresh Prince. He's naturally charismatic. He has no issues with the girls. He's actually a kind person. Like, he's a jock that isn't mean. He can fit in with any crowd. He doesn't seem to have any issues like anxiety or anything like that. So he's everything that Carlton wishes he was and everything that Carlton is not. Also, Carlton sees the relationship between Will and Uncle Phil, and so he sees that Will, he thinks and moves in a way that he feels that Uncle Phil probably wishes Will with his son and not Carlton. So Carlton kind of just operates on this thing of being let down, but instead of talking about his feelings, he self-sabotages, he schemes, and he leans into being a terrible person. Carlton is awful. I never liked Carlton in the regular Fresh Prince, but he is really awful in Bel-Air. So chatter is going on. Everybody's kind of just talking to like different influencers. One influencer talks to Aunt Viv, says that her necklace is really nice, and they talk about how she used to do art. Will is talking to another influencer just about like the life and the time and the energy. Trey is just knocking him back. Ashley is talking about another influencer about like just being non-binary and just kind of asking questions about gender fluidity and gender identity and things of that nature. Uncle Phil is talking to the head of the house where he asked him like, you know, what do you think about this? Like, why, like, what is happening? Like, you're a judge, your wife is an artist, and your daughter wants to go into influencing. And he was like, I love my daughter. Like, she was born premature and was fighting for her life, and she's been fighting for her place in this world ever since. Like, I'm never gonna dim that light on her. And so all these things are happening. One of the little prank brothers did something, and it kind of like dispersed everything. But everybody's just chatting. It's just a nice night of dinner. Uncle Phil ends up leaving and going to his office, and Carlton follows behind him, and he's all in there. Oh, so Will was in jail and you paid to get him out. Oh, you won't even do half of that for me, but you let him do this, that, and the third. And Uncle Phil's like, look, this is a completely different situation, and blah, blah, blah. And Carlton's like, don't you dare try to compare that to my anxiety and blah, blah, blah. But meanwhile, I don't think Carlton knows, they know that there's a slight drug problem. Like, sir, you don't just have anxiety. You are kind of almost a drug addict in this point. So he's just going off, and just his jealousy is just wildly all over the place. And Uncle Phil's like, look, keep it under wraps, like nobody knows. And Carlton was like, oh, I will, because unlike you, I know how to keep my word, or something like that. And Uncle Phil is just exhausted, y'all. Like, he is exhausted. Carlton is exhausting. In the regular version, the reimagined version, my dreams, Carlton is exhausting. Carlton uses his information to burst into Will's room and do what he does best: blackmail, manipulate, scheme, and just otherwise be an evil person. So he tells Will that he'll tell everybody if Will doesn't leave Lisa alone. So like I told y'all in my little summary at the beginning, he liked Lisa. And if you're not familiar with Lisa, Nia Long played the original Lisa. So he likes Lisa, but Lisa likes Will, and they just been getting to know each other. So Carlton's like, if you don't stay away from Lisa, I'll tell everyone everything. Enjoy. Honestly, I think Carlton is garbage. That's the last thing I'm gonna say. So Will, Trey, and Uncle Phil go to the concert. They're in the back area where they're meeting D-Smoke, and Trey is like super starstruck and everything like that. And Uncle Phil's like, give me a second. So he goes outside because he saw the chief of police, which is Lisa's dad, and he saw a congressman out there. So he was like, what's up? Because I know y'all not here to see D-Smoke. And so they were like, hey Uncle Phil, so what's up with defund the police? Like, if you keep running on this campaign, we're gonna make problems for you. And I don't remember in the original Lisa's dad, or us even knowing about Lisa's dad, but Lisa's dad in Bel-Air is definitely it rhymes with spoon. He's definitely one of those, and it's disheartening. But I mean, would this political race in this world of like affluence even be a thing if we didn't also have those willing to sell out other black people just to get close to whiteness and to get closer to privilege, especially black men? And that's Lisa's dad. And it's really sad because Lisa's mom passed away, and Lisa doesn't seem like that. Lisa is a really sweet girl, and her dad is complete trash. It's kind of atrocious. Uncle Phil was like, listen, I'm standing on business. I'm not gonna lie. Y'all doing too much. You're misappropriating funds, and what you're doing with these dollars as an LAPD, as just cops in general, is not enough. So I said what I said, and I'm standing on it. And he goes back inside to where Trey and Will are. We're back at the house, and Hillary and Ashley are talking and everything, and Ashley's like, you know, Hillary, you know, can I ask you something? And she's kind of going into that 12-year-old, like, there's this friend, and I think I might like this friend. And then she finally says, well, this friend is a girl. And Hillary's like, okay, so what's next? And Ashley's like, you know, you're not surprised that it's a girl? She was like, I'm surprised that you like anybody. You're literally just into your books, your studies, and stuff like that. And she was like, but you don't have to tell me it's a girl. You don't have to tell anybody anything. And they just have a conversation because Ashley's like, am I gay or anything? And she's like, you don't have to define a single thing. And I really like the way Hillary is portrayed here. Not that she was necessarily portrayed badly in the other one, but she kind of is the nucleus of the kids and that sounding board. Even though she's doing something that her mom deems wildly irrational and just off the straight and narrow path, she's pretty wise. She gives Carlton good advice. She covers down for him while also telling him he needs to get help. She helps Will out. She's there for her sister. And internally, it's because of how Phil is, and I would say her mom too. She's more grounded than her mom gives her credit for. And it really shows up whenever she interacts with her siblings and with Will. Back at the concert, Trey brings up again about Will going back. And at this point, it was brought up in a way that Will couldn't ignore. And this is the first time that Will opposes going back to Philly. And so Trey is getting mad. They're still at the concert, and he is upset. Like, you really finna turn your back on your people? Like, you really finna turn your back on us? And they get into a heated argument because Trey is just basically like, you know, you a sellout. You knew you wasn't gonna come back, and yet you toting me around, letting me think that you were. Now this part I thought was particularly interesting because Trey specifically said, you've been lying to me all day, talking about when we get back and what we're gonna do on the team and this, that, and the third. And I was just like, when did he say that? Will ain't said nothing all day. You've been putting it out there. You've been putting it into the universe. And you allowed yourself to think and feel and hear what you wanted in the midst of Will's silence and him avoiding the conversation altogether. So honestly, in this moment, I was just kind of like, Trey made himself mad. And if I was Will, you just have to be mad. I'm going to turn up and enjoy this concert, and you just going to be sitting in your feelings because what are you talking about? You made up this whole scenario. You've been acting funky and really trying to slide in stuff since you got here. Why would I give up a life that is good to me and beneficial to me? Outside of the money, I have a support. There's a man in this house. There's a woman in this house. There are siblings in this house. I'm not best friends with the parents in this house. Because let's face it, Will's mom treat him like, not like he her man in that sense, but putting those manly responsibilities on him, and so that you get this unhealthy attachment to him. And he can be a kid when he's with the Bankses. He is not a kid when he's with his mom. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Lisa and Carlton are planning like her mother's memorial. She already passed, but she wants to do like this annual thing for her to honor her mom, and things are clicking, which why wouldn't it? Lisa and Carlton were friends. But of course, Carlton is a weasel, a snake, and he goes in to try to kiss her, and she was like, boy, no, I don't like you like that. I don't want you like that. I will never want you like that. You're just a friend, and now you just made this awkward. So he's sitting there looking dumb. Moving back inside the house, Will and Trey are going at it only in the way that friends can. Trey at this point is packing up his bags and wanting to get ready to like, that sentence didn't even make any sense. He's packing up his bags so that he can leave early. And he accuses Will of trying to level up. What he says specifically is, you want to level up and leave my broke ass behind. So now the dam has broken. He's seeing all this opulence, and he's seeing Will get lucky in a sense, and he's feeling less than. And this is one of them dangerous situations where, because of those emotions, given the right ingredients and the right circumstances, this could be those situations where you have a friend who would be willing to take you out just so you don't have what they want. And so now we're exploring like the dark themes of this story, the dark themes of Willard Smith's life, because I doubt in real life it was just as playful as we thought it was or wanted it to be. So for me, I love Bel-Air more than the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I wasn't even really like a Fresh Prince of Bel-Air fan. I love the song. I know some episodes for sure, but I love Bel-Air more because it's, one, I connect to it more. The backstories I connect to. I connect to the comeuppance of it all, the accusations of leveling up, accusations of feeling like being accused of abandoning the people that you like, your day ones and stuff like that. I relate to that more than the goofiness and the silliness of the Fresh Prince. So this is something that I can get behind. So Will snaps back and he was like, bruh, this ain't got nothing to do with leveling up and leaving you behind. If you're my friend, like you say you are, you would simply support me. So they're just really going back and forth. And Trey is just, he don't want to listen. And he don't want to understand. And Trey is like, you know, you got rich and I got shot. Like, basically just talking about the fairness of it all. And so he gets all his stuff and he get ready to leave. And they just did so good because they're both crying. This wasn't no, oh, I'm trying to be hard, I'm trying to be this and the third. They are two friends who experienced the same traumatic situation, and yet one person had resources and the other one didn't. And now the background and the juxtaposition of those types of situations and circumstances in real life is being played out on TV. So they are crying because they're fighting, they're crying because they're mourning their friendship and probably wondering if they'll ever be friends again. Trey's probably feeling like once he leaves, Will is never going to want to mess with him again, because why would he? He has all of this. And Will is thinking he's never going to mess with me again because he thinks that I'm selling out. And I just really I hate that so much. Will goes in the house and he finds Aunt Viv and he is crying, and he's like, Trey left early and I don't even know if we can even be friends anymore. Like, this is crazy. And she tells him, you know, both of you experienced a traumatic event and both of you are trying to figure out what's going on in your own way, and how you're handling it and how he's handling it. Both of you are right, neither of you are wrong. It's just unfortunate that it's kind of coming out this way, and maybe it's best that both of you take a little bit of space to really get through the trauma of it all, because neither one of them have processed what actually happened. And I love that Aunt Viv took this moment to care for them. Even Trey, even though he wasn't in the room, she took this moment to care for them and not make it be like Trey is only going to bring you down, or you're doing so well, so just focus on your studies. She really acknowledged the trauma and acknowledged that they both need to get through the trauma instead of trying to push it down. So Will is outside. Trey done called the Uber. Aunt Viv changed all the flight plans and everything like that. And they're just standing outside, side to side. And, you know, Will does one more plea. Like, you don't have to go early. Like, we're homies. Like, we bros. Like, we could just catch up. And Trey was like, you're not about to treat me like some charity case. And he was like, I don't want to be seen as soft. Whoo, child. I'm not going to say what I want to say because this is already long. But black male masculinity, ego, fragility. You know where I'm going. So he's like, I don't want to seem soft. And Will basically tells him it's not soft if you realize that there's just more to life than the neighborhood that you grew up in. And on that note, Trey gets into the car and they look at each other and they both got tears coming down their face, and the car drives off. And it's really sad, and it's just really punctuated by just crabs in a barrel, to be honest. Unfortunately, that's what Trey was. He was signifying the crab in a barrel, and Will wanted to bring him out, gave him opportunity and lent him a hand to come out, and he chose to go back in the barrel, and leaving Will no choice but to escape it on his own. So Viv comes in, she finds Hillary, and she's like, oh, that's such a nice necklace that your friend gave me. And Hillary's like, I could tell by your tone that you being fake. And Viv was like, am I really always that critical? Like, I thought I was being genuine. And Hillary was like, you do this thing with your voice and it just comes off very fake. And she just opens up to her like, you know, I know you think that I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm really passionate about this. Like, why can't you just be proud of me? Like, even if I fail, just be there for me, but let me do it. And Aunt Viv was like, you know, I'm always proud of you. I've always been proud of you. And in the middle of her speech, Hillary just hugs her because she's never heard it. And in a previous episode, I know we're not recapping it, but just to give you context, when Hillary first brought up going into an influencer house, her Aunt Viv got into it really bad, and Hillary told her, the only reason you mad at me is because I'm chasing my dreams and you gave yours up. Clock it. Clock it. So Hillary and Aunt Viv are very much the same, and Aunt Viv sees what she gave up in Hillary. And in this reimagined version, because in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like Aunt Viv, like Janet Hubert, to me, she was perfect. She was the perfect disciplinarian. She always knew what to say. If she didn't, she always went to her husband. They always talked about things. She was just always insightful and just always encouraging while disciplining you, while reprimanding you, and while speaking life into you, while speaking realism into you if you were just head in the clouds. But here in the reimagined version, you can see that she wants to be the one that has it all together, but she doesn't. She doesn't. There's a little resentment to Uncle Phil by life only being focused on his career. When are we getting back to mine? There's some jealousy towards Hillary. Not that she's jealous of what she's doing, but just jealous at the freedom that her daughter gets to have because she's not a parent. She hasn't had to make that sacrifice yet. So she has the freedom to fail and have the family to fall back on, where Aunt Viv is feeling like it's too late for her to get back into her own passions. So just this moment in the kitchen, in them having that heart to heart, it really kind of like connects everything together with their relationship to bring them from being at odds. So there's a real trust here. Aunt Viv trusting Hillary and allowing her the space to make those mistakes, and Hillary trusting that her mom is genuinely supporting her. Even if she doesn't understand it, she just wants her to say, I'm proud of you and I support you. We're back in Will's room and he's on FaceTime with his mom, and she's so excited and she's talking about when you get back and what we gonna do and all this other stuff. And he's like, I've been thinking I don't want to come back, and there's just better opportunities out here for me, and I'm thriving and I want to see what I can do. And she's like, no, like it was always supposed to be me and you, like what happened to that? And he was like, remember when you told me when I was younger that there's gonna be a day where I have to step into my crown and be ready to wear it and find my own path? And he was like, I'm ready to put that crown on and figure out what I want to do with my life. And she was a little taken aback because he used his words against her, but that's when you can kind of see like she never wanted to stunt his growth. And so I love that he said that you told me that this day will come, and you told me that you would let me step into that and grow into that with space away from you. And this moment has come, and she acquiesces. She says, you know, we'll plan a visit. They say their I love yous, and the decision in season 1 episode 5 is made that Will chose to stay in Bel-Air. So there's that. Bel-Air Reimagined season 1 episode 5. It was a lot, okay? Shout out to them. They are renewed for a season 3. So if you have not watched binge season 1 and season 2 on Peacock, season 3 is coming later this summer. You do not want to miss it. So like I said at the beginning, the reason I chose this episode, because I think a lot of people who were in that situation can relate. And I think it's a storyline that people don't often talk about. If you're ever in that situation, it's something that you don't even really bring up, because how? If you're in a room with people and they're talking about struggle, but they've only met you when you weren't struggling, and then you bring up the story, they call in cap, they call in bullshit on that life. And now they're putting you in this situation where you feel like you have to prove how down you are, or how hood you are, or how broke you were, to show that you actually started from the bottom and that you didn't get a leg up. Then on the other side, the people of affluence and the area in which you're now trying to grow, they know that you didn't come from this, and so they're treating you a certain way. They're saying, oh, you're not standing tall enough, you're not speaking good enough, oh, you got broken English, and all this other stuff. And so it's really this thing where only people who've been in that situation know the struggle. And as somebody who chose to move to a better situation, I connected with Will at the end of the episode where it was his choice. Because what you gonna do? What you gonna do as a parent? You gonna have to someday not be selfish and allow your kids to make their own decisions without you, and just be there if they choose to come back, or just be there to support them as they thrive. And a lot of parents in that situation, they create chaos and turmoil so that they can sabotage the child who is trying to do better. It's why you get people look at athletes where they get famous and they do all this other stuff and then they go into jail or they stealing with their friends and all this other stuff. And you hear a lot of people be like, why would you do that? You got all this money and da 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 da. This, the Treys in their friend group telling them that they soft now, that they weak, that you left them behind. Oh, you don't know nothing about this life no more. You bougie. Oh, you Hollywood now. Oh, you suburban now. And they make you feel so guilty that you end up making the worst decision ever. Now, while you're in jail or dead, they're free and living. And so this episode really says and shows you that sometimes you got to let the past go, even when it hurts. The people that claim they love you will sometimes be the very people to bring you down. And unfortunately, Will had to learn this the hard way through his childhood friend, his best friend. While that very friend is leaving thinking that there is no better life for him. So it's even sad on the other side too, because he can't see a life of opulence. He can't see a life outside his neighborhood. He can't see a life for himself outside of being poor, outside of gangs, outside of death. And that's really sad. And it sucks. It sucks. It takes a lot of therapy. I hope they tackle therapy. I hope Will goes to therapy in the upcoming seasons. I went through therapy to say no, to really learn how to separate myself from certain situations where I'm like, I can love you and I can support you, but it's not going to be with my money, and it's not going to be with my energy, and it's not going to be with my life. And that's where we see Will at the end of this episode. So with that, I will catch you in the next one. Be sure to rate my podcast. You can rate it and leave reviews on Apple Podcasts, and then you can leave comments. I do like Q&As and stuff on Spotify, so you can just leave notes, any shows or episodes that you specifically want me to recap, interact with me. Also, you can follow me on Instagram at So There's That Podcast. I have not been doing a good job of promoting my Instagram, but at So There's That Podcast, no spaces, no underscores, nothing like that. All right, I'm out.